Okay, it's in the UK here 15:32, 3:32. So we'll get going. First of all, a big welcome to those who are on this webinar. Thank you very much for your time. I know there's people calling in from Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere, all sorts of places across the globe. So your time is appreciated. The title of this webinar is an S1000D masterclass that we'll cover, as it says in front of you, converting MS Word to S1000D. Let's just quickly look at some housekeeping. First of all, we are recording this, and at the end, my colleague who's also on the call, Kate, will let you know how you're going to be able to receive that. It'll be mainly via follow-up emails. Questions and answers. In the bottom panel of Zoom, there is a Q&A button. If you wouldn't mind adding any questions you do have to that panel, and as we come to the end of the last part of this webinar, we will do our best to answer some questions. We've got 45 minutes to cover. Yeah, so we'll make the recording available as well. I'm just looking at my notes here. We'll make the recording available on YouTube as well. So we're going to cover some slides, as you would expect, but then we're going to go into a full demo. So as I say, if you can use the Q&A panel, that would be great, and we'll try and answer some questions. I think that's it. I'm going to hand over, to Jake Memory, who's going to take us through the vast majority of this masterclass. I'll come back in at the end and try and handle some of the questions, and then hand over to Kate Hawkins, who will finish off the this webinar, just again with following up on the housekeeping and give you details about where things will be and the emails that you'll receive. Okay, hand over to Jake.
Thank you very much, Phil. And again, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining. We've had a great response to this, the webinar and the questionnaire, so thank you. We've got a lot to get through in a relatively short space of time, so I'll crack right on. There is some slides to go through, as Phil mentioned, so I feel it's important just to put some context around it and a bit of theory before we jump into the demo. So please try to stay awake for that. Okay, firstly, who am I? I am Jake Memory. I've worked within the A&D industry for the past 25 years, working with S1000D for getting on for 20 of those. During that career, I've completed a number of Word to S1000D conversion projects of varying scales, from a few hundred pages up to around sort of 25,000–30,000 pages. So some fairly large projects. During those projects, I've tried and tested various automation tools, various tools from different vendors. Quite often what you find is that whilst they claim to do a lot of the work for you, you end up actually not really trusting what they've done and having to go back and do a lot of validation work and clean up and all that kind of stuff afterwards. So it's that experience that led me to think there's got to be a better way, and there is, and that's what we have designed and built. And it's essentially to do the heavy lifting of getting Word, the data out and into an S1000D structure, and we'll look a bit more about that in a minute. So firstly, let's manage your expectations from the start. If you're hoping that I'm going to tell you there's a way to press a button and S1000D will magically come out of the other side, then you're going to be disappointed, because there is no silver bullet or magic application. And the reason for that is that Word documents can be formatted and structured in an almost unlimited number of ways. If you think about how Word documents use different styles and formatting and tables, and there's no way that any software can possibly understand exactly how you need that data broken down, chunked up, and how you want it to come out in S1000D, how you want it to be structured. So there are conversion companies out there which will charge you, fairly hefty sums of money, and they may have tools that they can adjust and tailor their algorithms specifically for your data. But more often than not, companies, that the data is sensitive, they don't want to offload it. And again, that's why we've built a tool. It's a lightweight tool that sits within Word itself. You can do this in-house relatively simply, and it takes the complication out of it. So that's what we'll be looking at. Okay, so what can we do? Well, unfortunately, the only way around it is planning. Good planning is the key to any conversion project. So we've established that no tool can completely automate the process. So what can we do? So it's understanding that converting data is a process. It's a project. It's something that needs planning and execution at every stage. It should be treated like any other project, so planned sufficiently, resourced appropriately, and executed effectively. It's not something you just decide to do on a whim and try and muddle through. But what we can do, we can try to automate the labor-intensive part of the conversion, i.e., as we said, doing the heavy lifting of getting the data from Word and getting that into a structured XML format, an S1000D format. So there's some pre-conversion considerations before you even start looking at getting data out of Word. And this is part of the planning phase. And the big question is why? Why are we doing this in the first place? Is it for a specific contract requirement, which is more often than not, that will be the case? Or is it just to future-proof ourselves and our data to enable single source publishing, PDF, IETP, or reduced duplication, or any of those other things that, any of those other advantages that structured content gives us? But the why will answer a lot of the other questions. So, which version are we going to? 4.1, 5, 4.2, any number of S1000D versions. Do we need simplified technical English? That's going to add another layer of complication to what we're doing. How good is the source data? That's a big one as well. Do we need style guide, Brex requirements? Are there any style guide and Brex requirements? What are the graphic formats that we need? CSD, do we have the tooling, the CSDBs, the editors? What's our workflow going to be? And when I'm talking about workflow, it's not just, the converting the data, reviewing it and issuing it, but the workflow at a more granular level, such as, how much pre-conversion work do we want to do versus post-conversion work? Do we want to do the cross-referencing and the DM refs pre-conversion, or do we want to do that afterwards in proper S1000D XML authoring tools? Do we have the resources before or afterwards? There's a number of things that we really need to consider before we start. And the resourcing experience, do we have that? Well, hopefully this tool removes some of that. We don't necessarily need S1000D experience to use this tool, but all of these things need to be considered before we start. So again, as part of the conversion planning process, the general process that we're going to be looking at is firstly creating a standard numbering system, i.e. a product breakdown structure for our equipment. This is part of the planning phase, and we need to do that before we do anything. We then need to create a data module requirements list, DMRL, which we can do in Excel to map our existing data to the new S1000D data modules. Now, if the terminologies used here are foreign to you, don't worry, because the templates that we provide as part of the tool takes you through how to do this, and it gives you some examples, so that's really simple. Step 3 would be extract the data from Word, create and populate the DMs with the data, the text, the graphics, the tables, and then we need to do some cleanup. More often than not, if there's STE requirements, again, part of that planning process is going to be deciding whether we do the STE afterwards or before. An STE, by the way, simplified technical English, in case you didn't catch that. And are there any other style guide requirements and things like that? And then we need to validate and approve the DMs. And for that, we're probably going to need a CSDB and editor. So that takes us back to, do we have the tools to do this? So these steps can be categorized really into 3 main phases. So we've got the planning phase, phase 1, and then we've got the conversion phase, phase 2, and then we've got the cleanup and validation phase, phase 3. So I think what we can establish is that steps 1 and 2 are clearly going to be needed, and there's no way in which these can be automated. We need to manually create a DMRL. We need to manually create an SNS, excuse me, and we need to manually validate the resulting data. Therefore, it's phase 2 where we're going to concentrate. Phase 2 where we're going to concentrate most of our efficiencies. So that's going to be this area here. So, as an example of what a manual conversion process would look like for that phase, it would be these kind of steps. We'd manually be creating data modules. We manually have to create the structure in the DMs, manually copy data from Word, paste it into the structure. And if you imagine that's tables as well, recreating tables in the S1000D, the CALS format, manually copying graphics and assigning them ICNs and adding them to the data modules. So we don't really want to be doing that. So what if we could automate much of that process? It would look something like this. We'd automatically create the data modules, automatically create the structure, automatically get the data out of Word, that heavy lifting we were talking about, populating the data module structure, automatically recreating and building the tables from Word into our counts format, and again, extracting the graphics and assigning them ICNs. So that clearly is going to reduce time, cost, resources, and increase accuracy and efficiency. So just a couple more slides. Our Word document structure. So how are Word documents structured? So they use styles for the most part, right? With any luck, your documents already have some styling within them. So we have headings, lists, titles, tables, graphics, etc. All of those things have styles attached to them. And in S1000D, how is that structured? Well, we use XML elements. So we use steps and lists and paragraphs and subparas. So not dissimilar when you think about it. Okay, we've got styles for Word and we've got XML elements in S1000D. So therefore, if you think about it, it's logical that we should better map the Word styles to our S1000D elements. And that is essentially what the tool that we've designed and developed does. So let's get into the demo. Okay, now I just need to do a bit of IT reconfigurations, just bear with me.
So while Jake's doing that, as I say, please feel free to put any questions in the Q&A panel. There's a lot of people on, so we're not going to be able to easily handle a verbal set of questions. But if you do have any questions and we can get to them, we will do. But obviously, put the questions in and we can take questions offline and respond to you that way.
Thanks, Phil. Okay, so I'm assuming you can still see my screen. Can you just confirm, Phil? The Word document? Hello?
Sorry, I was unmuted. Yes, we can. Yeah.
Thanks, great. Okay, so what we're looking at here is a fairly typical extract from a maintenance manual. Okay, so we've got some descriptive text in here. We've got some tables. We've got some graphics. And we've got some description and procedural data in here as well. Excuse me, some support equipment down here that needs to come across. So, you know, nothing out of the ordinary, fairly typical stuff. Okay, so the Word add-in itself, the tool itself is, as I say, it's a Word add-in. So that means when you install it, you get this little S1000D ribbon item up here. And if we click on that, we can see there's 3 buttons in there, and we'll have a look at those in just a second. One of the other things that we get when we install the tool is it installs this signal folder within your documents folder. I'm not going to go into all of these in detail, but the ones that are important are the DMRL. So we'll have a quick look in there. And this is essentially what the tool uses to know how you want to chunk up the data, and it will make more sense when we get into it. But if I just open that now, just to show an example. So this is the DMRL that we will be working with, that I've pre-prepared for the document that we're working with. So we can see here that these are kind of the main headings, the main chapters, if you will, of the Word document. And we've got our new S1000D info names, and we've codified them accordingly there. Now, again, this isn't anything to be afraid of if you haven't codified data modules before. In fact, with this template that you get, we do include a couple of other tabs down here. This graphic in here tells you, this is lifted directly from the spec, and this tells you how the data module codes are broken down. And we've also listed all of the info codes in here just for convenience. And we've got the standard S1000D SNS in here as well. So with these 2 tabs, you can more or less get to where you need to go with this coding, but more than happy to spend a bit more time on that, you know, outside of this, this webinar. Okay, so let's close that. Now, the only other folder we want to look at here is the output folder, and currently there is nothing in it, but this is where our S1000D data modules will be saved to. Okay, so back to our document. So let's quickly have a look in the settings menu here. So our output schema, we can choose, there's various different S1000D versions that the tool currently supports. If you needed a different one, please reach out to us and we can discuss, you know, how much or little effort will be involved in implementing that. Normally not a huge amount. We point at our DMRL file here. So the DMRL that you just saw me open, we're just pointing at that file there. Some other pieces of information relating to each module that we build. So originator code, RPC cage code, language security, ICN formats here. So the ICNs will automatically be generated. And what I mean by that is the tool will extract the graphics from the Word document and it will assign them an ICN in accordance with this, this format. And it will auto increment the sequential number here as well, so you don't have to worry about that. Cross-ref IDs, so this will be a project decision, and again it goes back to the whole planning phase and why are we doing this. If it's a contractual requirement, you will probably be told what the cross-reference convention will be, but typically it'll be something like fig dash and a 0001, 0002, etc., or it may be F. So we can configure that here as well. Only other thing to mention here is the page credit file. So the tool works using page credits. And it's a completely standalone tool, so there's no connection to any external services or online services. Your PC can be completely shut off from the internet and it would still work. Essentially, you just buy page credits that are prepaid for. Okay, so we're happy with this. We'll go to 4.2 in this example, so I can just come out of here. Next, I'm going to click on Word to S1000D, and that will open up this panel on the right-hand side here. And again, I'm not going to go through all of these individually, but the next thing I want to do is just come home and I want to open my styles pane on the left-hand side here. Now, what we can see here, when I clicked on Word to S1000D, the button, and we open this pane, what it's done is it's applied a new template in the background to the document. So what that means now is that we've got all these S1000D styles in here. So there's a whole bunch of these. Some of these are common between descriptive and procedural. Some of them are specific to procedural, i.e. the steps. And these subparas and parazeros are specific to descriptives. Don't worry if the naming convention doesn't mean much to you. Really what's important here is the level that we're looking at. So it's like a heading 1, heading 2, heading 3. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is just come down into my document. And I'm just going to start clicking around in here and having a look at what styles have been used and how well structured the Word document is from the word go. So we've got some titles here, headings, and we can see normal, so list paragraphs, heading 2s. Okay, so as we're clicking around, we can see the document's got some structure, and that's exactly what we need for this tool to work. So essentially what we're trying to do is to map our existing styles that we've got in here, our headings and our lists, to our new S1000D styles. Now, there's a couple of ways that we can do this, and it depends on if you've just got one document to work with, or if you've got a whole folder full of documents to convert, as part of the process. So if you have a whole folder full of Word documents, we've got this style mapper function down here. So I'll just click on that for a moment, and that opens up this style pane here, the style mapper pane. Now, what this essentially enables you to do is if I click on introduction, this is a heading 1, I can set the existing word style. That's a heading 1. Now I'm going to want all of my heading 1s to be new S1000D styles. I'm going to want them to be, this indenture here. So I'll click on that and I'll set the S1000D word style to S1000D para0 title, and I will save that style pair. Now it's going to tell me I've already actually done it because I've already pre-prepared some of these. But what we're essentially trying to do is build up this table with all of our styles, our existing styles mapped to our new S1000D styles. What that then enables us to do is we can choose a folder full of our Word documents, and we can run a batch conversion process to convert all of the styles in one go. So that has some huge advantages, time-saving advantages. Now, I'm not actually going to use that process today. I'm going to do it a slightly more labor-intensive way, just to demonstrate how the tool is actually working. But just bear in mind that that's there if you've got multiple Word documents. So I'm just going to undo what we've just done there, change that back to a heading 1. So as we said, we need to convert all of the styles to our new S1000D styles. Now, fortunately, Word has the built-in ability for us to select all. So I can select all of the heading 1s in the document. And if I were to scroll down, that would show me they're all selected. And I can convert all those in one go, excuse me, to our new S1000D para0 titles. And I come back up and click on this is normal, and it will tell me how many instances. There's 456 instances of this, so I'll just select that. And it normally takes a few seconds to select that many. There we go. And I want all of those just to be standard S1000D paragraph text. So anything in S1000D that's within a para tag, essentially that's what that's going to do. Okay, I'll come back up to this list and click in there. This is a list paragraph, so I want to select all 32 instances of this. And I want those to be our new S1000D random lists, rand lists. Okay. So bear in mind again that we only have to do this once. We're kind of training the tool here, particularly if you use the style mapper, we're kind of training the tool as to what styles are being mapped to what. Okay, notes. So we'll select all 3 instances of note and we'll go S1000D note. Come back up. And here we have heading 2s. So I'll select all 6 instances of the heading 2s. And we want that to be this second indenture subpara 1s in S1000D speak or in old S1000D speak. Okay. Now, obviously, it's going to start getting quite difficult soon to see what we have styled and what we haven't. So we've got the ability here just to click on this identify button and we can click update document. And what that will do now, it will highlight any styles, any text that hasn't been styled with an S1000D style yet. So essentially tell us what we're missing, where we're missing. Whenever I share screen, it takes a few extra seconds. Normally this is pretty lightning fast. And there we go. Okay, so it's telling us here that the titles we haven't done yet. And if I click on that, we've got some captions that I haven't done yet. But if we just scroll through and have a look where that green text is, we can see that actually by using the process that we've been doing, actually much of this document has now been styled already. Okay, I'm going to leave the titles for a minute and there's a reason for that and we'll explain in a minute. So the captions will just carry on. I want 6 instances of captions and I want those to be my table titles. So it's done those. Okay, let's come down and figures. Okay, so we've got some figure titles here as well. So they are standard. There's just a figure caption here. So we want all 4 instances of those. And I want to select figure titles for those. Now, the reason I have left the titles here is essentially because we're not really interested in whatever title was being used in the Word document. And the reason for that is because we now have our new S1000D based naming convention. We have a tech name and an info name. So what we can do, I can actually select all the titles. I'll select 9 instances of those. And I will just click on S1000D ignore. So anything that we apply this style to will get completely ignored by the tool and will not come across into our S1000D. Now, let me do these as well. Let's just click on that heading 3s, like those. So they will be subpara 2 titles. Okay, now it doesn't automatically update the highlighting. We have to click on update document again, and it will update those for us. And that will be practically all of the descriptive, there we go, descriptive content captured now. So there's a bit of procedural down here. So we'll just look down here at the procedure. So, okay. So what we've got here is a procedure for, excuse me, testing the range of movement for the rudder controls. Now, headings like part number, quantity and item, and this equipment heading, and in fact this one here, we don't want that to come across into S1000D either, because obviously there are areas within the structure of S1000D data modules that we put our resources in. We don't need to give it a heading of equipment or support equipment or whatever. That will be taken care of at the publishing side by style sheets. Okay, so I'm just going to choose ignore here for those. What I am going to do, I'm just going to do the intense references here. So I'll select the 4 instances of those and we want those to be warnings. There we go. And okay, so we've got some support equipment. Now, as I said back at the start, it could well be a project decision that you think it's easier or more efficient to do the support equipment afterwards. Again, that's part of whatever workflow process you choose to adopt, but we can do it at this stage. So I can highlight this, I can double click on support equipment item. I can then highlight this one and just do a right click and say that's the nomenclature. That there is our quantity. And this one here is our part number, and we'll do the same for this one here. Double click. Oops. Let's just add it as a supply. It really doesn't matter. We'll just have it as a supply. I misclicked then, but never mind. And that's our quantity, and this is our part number. Okay. Okay, so there's a bit of procedural text down here. So what have we got here? This is a procedural heading. So let's select all 6 instances of those. Now, again, a project decision. Do we want to use step 1s for these, or do we want to use step titles? And some companies prefer step titles. Some prefer to use step 1s. I think for the demo, I'll just use step titles. Doesn't really matter. And then finally, we've got some procedural level 1s. So we'll select all of these 16 instances, and they will be our step 1s. So if I click update document now, we should have pretty much cleared everything, I think. Okay, a couple small things there to do. So this will be a sequential list. So let's just highlight that. And this will be a numbered list. And this one here is a numbered list as well. Okay. So I think we have styled the whole document, but it will let me know if we haven't anyway. So let's just crack on with that. So the only other thing that we need to do now is to tell it where the data modules are going to start and end, and which data module we want to assign each chunk of text to. Now, there's ways in which we could kind of automate, and we could tell it, okay, when you see a title, that will be the start, and then the next one will be the end. But how does it know which data module you want it to go to? Again, we're leaving it down to risk to some degree. So what we've done, we've just designed it so that now I'm just going to scroll down, and then I'll hold shift and select the data. So that's selected that one. If I click on double click on DM container, here are my data modules that I had in my DMRL. So I can say, okay, I want that first piece of text, that first chunk of text to belong to this data module. It's a descriptive module. I'll click select. And then this next one. And that ends there. Double click DM container. And that's that one there. That's a descriptive. And this one here. Okay, that one ends there. And this is our instrument and control panels. And then we've got our electrical power one here. So let's highlight this one. Now you notice we're not doing anything with tables whatsoever. The tables will automatically be extracted and converted, and the same with the figures. Electrical power, and then just a couple of procedures down here. Now, once I wrap this one, this is rudder controls adjust. And as I'm going through, you can see it's telling me it's allocated, so I know where I am in the DMRL. Sorry, that's a procedural. Okay, now this warning, these pair of warnings here, these are actually what's called safety conditions. So these need to go at the top of the module in their own safety conditions section. So we can actually tag them accordingly. So I'm going to double click on safety conditions, and that's going to wrap that in a little safety tag there. Okay, and then finally, this one here. And come down to here, let's get rid of that. Oops. DM container, and this is our last module, our cowlings, remove and install, procedure, select. Okay, so we have successfully tagged up and wrapped our content in our tags. Now, bear in mind, if this document's only 19 pages, but it could be 100 pages, and it wouldn't have taken me much longer because of the way that we're converting all of the styles in one go. The only thing that will take a little bit longer is the fact that we've got to wrap the chunks of text and assign them a data module. But aside from that, it's, you get greater efficiencies with the more content there is. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to hit the run button, and then what will happen, it will run through some validation checks. And in fact, what I'm going to do, I'm going to introduce an error or a problem just to highlight how that might work. So here, for example, if I had selected step 2 as opposed to a step 1, which it shouldn't allow with any luck. So let's hit run and see what that says to us. So it's going through each container individually. Now it will be ignoring anything outside of a container. So you saw me wrap the contents of text and I assigned a data module code. It will ignore anything outside of those containers. So for example, the title page, it's ignored that. The table of contents, completely ignored that. So we don't have to worry about any of that. So here we can see that most of them have passed validation. Here it's saying we cannot have a step 2 without a step 1, not S1000D compliant. Okay, so let's come back in here. Where were we? Just up here. And there we go. It's highlighted the problem areas for me. So, oh yeah, sure. I've got a step 2 there. I need a step 1. And it's found something down here as well. In actual fact, we probably wouldn't want this descriptive content in a procedural module anyway. What have we got here? Paratext. Yes, that's not going to work. Okay, so let me, oops. I'm going to ignore that because we don't generally have descriptive content inside of a procedural data module. Okay, let's try that again and see what it does. Okay, one more problem, S1000D paratext. Okay, so where's it found the paratext? There we go, okay. Let's try that with step 1. Oh, I see, okay, so it's finding that as paratext, right, step 1. Okay, let's try that again.
Quick time check, Jake, we're about 35 minutes in.
Okay, thank you. Okay, it's giving me some. Where's my problem area there? Always happened on a demo, right? Oh, I see. Right. Okay. So it's telling me that we've got, okay, this is fair enough. It's telling me that we've got a table title, but we don't have any tables. So let's have a look and see what's gone wrong there. Is it this one here? Yes. Okay. So this is a figure title, not a table title. So that was absolutely right. And it was my mistake. Okay. Now we have passed validation, and now I will click OK and it will start building the data modules. So we can see the process is running here. It's going through and it tells us exactly what it's doing here. It's extracting the data out of the Word document and it's starting to build our data modules. So here it is building those tables. And again, we didn't have to touch those tables. We didn't have to style them or do anything to them. It's automatically building those for us. It's telling us when it's successfully built them with this green. And this literally takes a few seconds for each module, depending on the size. Okay, so the total number of containers that it found within the Word document was 6, and the total number of data modules it created was 6. So pretty good. So let's close that and we can go to our output folder now. And there are all of our data modules and our graphics that have been saved with our sequential board numbers. So now what we're just going to quickly do is we'll just chuck them into our CSDB. So I'm going to zip them up. Is everything taking longer when I'm sharing screen? Come on, PC. There we go. Right, compress to zip folder. Okay, we'll just call that import. And now I'll just quickly switch to my CSDB. Okay, I'll pre-set up a project in here, which has only got one data module in it for the moment. That's the Brex module. So we'll go to import and I'll just import those files. So import. So what this is going to do, it's going to do some validation checks to make sure that the data module is parsed. And as you can see, we've got a full complement of blue ticks, which is what we want. So these are our modules. It's run a series of checks against those modules. Parsing check being the most important one to us right now. We know they all parse and we can import them. So I'll click import. Okay, 6 imported, 5 graphics, great. Let's go to our data module manager. Here are our modules. So let's open up this one. So we just assign it to ourselves quickly. And we can now check it out and work that data module. So for anyone unfamiliar with this editing environment, this is our integrated signal editing environment. And here is our support equipment and our consumables. So this consumable that I accidentally tagged up as a consumable should have been support equipment, but there it is anyway. As you can see, looking down through, there's no XML here, but just to show that I'm not cheating, here is all the XML underneath. We do have S1000D. And what you would now typically want to do is just go through and just do any minor cleanup that you wanted to do, any cross-referencing. You can, of course, do the cross-referencing at the Word stage. We do have the facility in there to add references to data modules or to figures. Again, project decision as to whether you'd want to do that before or after. So we can see here, this one's got 3 graphics. So let's just do the same with that one quickly. We'll just open that. Okay. And here is our descriptive data module. And there it is, and there's our graphics coming in. So it's automatically lifted those graphics for us to assign them an ICN number and put them into the entities in the correct place in the data module, ready to use or reference. Again, a little bit of cleanup. You might want to remove the word things like figure 1 because we wouldn't need that. And that is more or less it. I'm sure there are questions. Phil, do you want to?
There are indeed. Yeah. So we're pretty much on 40 minutes and there are quite a few questions. So I will decide which questions we're going to do. So let me just start with one of the early questions, Jake, and I'll read it to you is, how about the tools / consumables / spare, I think that might mean part information from the source. How is that handled?
I think I may have answered that with what I just demonstrated, how you can tag that up in the Word phase. If not, whoever it was that asked the question, please jump in. But essentially, we are tagging that up as being support equipment or a supply or a spare. Now, you know, there's not really any way the tool can identify how you have that structured in your Word document. It might be in a table, for example, it might not. So we figured the easiest way is that, look, you know, the user just tells the tool what's the support equipment item, what's the supply item, and it eliminates the risk.
Okay.
And again, it goes back to, just to add to that, it goes back to wanting trust in the automation, not having to second guess or guess what the tool has done with your data. So the idea is with this, you can actually have a bit of trust that you're telling it exactly what you want it to do, and you're not having to go and do loads of line-by-line validation in the resulting XML.
Okay. Next question. Again, I'll read it. If there's no formatting to the source data, do you need to apply basic Word paragraph styles before running the pairing of the Word doc styles to S1000D tag styles?
Okay, great question. So if, for example, you have back converted PDF back into Word, and that can create a huge mess, as you know, and more often than not, the styles won't be particularly consistent. And again, I'm going to jump back to the planning phase and the scale of the project. So if you've got a large scale project, I would highly recommend, if your data is not in a good position to start with, that, you know, as part of that planning or the pre-processing phase, that you go through the Word document and you get it into a sensible state, including styling it. Now you can use these styles from the word go. So you could go through and style them, you know, style each paragraph manually, or you can apply your own kind of company template if you want, and then map to the S1000D styles. But I would highly recommend, before you even think about converting, that you get your document baselined in a decent formatted document to start with.
Wow, great. Okay. This is a good one. So same person, I think. If the same graphic is used multiple times within the Word document, will each instance get a new ICN, or will only one be created?
Yeah, so the way the tool works, it obviously looks at the paragraph, checks if there's a graphic within the paragraph. So it doesn't know if that graphic that you've got in there is the same as a graphic that you've got 10 pages down. So in answer to the question directly, it will see each instance of that graphic as a new graphic. And again, I'm going to hark back to the preparation phase. Really, these are things you need to consider and think, okay, do I have a graphic here in chapter 3 that is used in chapter 1, for example? And part of this planning and this pre-conversion phase would be maybe to move the graphics to where they're needed.
Okay. So I think we've still got a little bit more time. So let's just pursue these questions. So this is an interesting one from a product management point of view. Is it possible to create design content interaction in the S1000D solution? And then again, just reading it, kind of a dynamic document with 3D and CAD. So I think that starts to move towards IETMs and IETPs, perhaps, Jake.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure on the question, to be honest.
Okay.
When we start talking about 3D and having 3D models within S1000D, a lot of it, I mean, S1000D is just making reference to a file. That's all it's doing. Really, it's the IETP, the IETM at the end, whether that can consume 3D or display 3D. That's the bigger question, really. Yeah, 3D is a whole different subject.
Okay. Final question, because I need to hand over to Kate to finish this presentation. Another great question. I like the language as well. So what programming language are you using, and what other essential tools to create this wonderful masterpiece? I am reading verbatim.
Are you?
Promise.
Are you sure?
Yes, I promise.
That wasn't rigged, was it? No.
Nope. Nope.
Okay, so it's written in C#. So it's underlying C#, and the way, without going too into the weeds, the way that you develop add-ins like this is by using what's called VSTO, Visual Studio Tools for Office. So C# is the underlying language.
Okay. We are getting close to 45 minutes, and we intended to finish at 45 minutes. Thank you, everybody, for all of your time and attention this afternoon. I'm going to hand over to Kate. Kate will finish the webinar with some details about how we're going to follow up. Over to you, Kate.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks, Jake. So this is just to finish up really and let everyone know how we will get the recording and also access to download a license to trial with 30 pages that are available to have a play around with this post the webinar. So I will send out an email tomorrow that will have a link so that you can rewatch this or share it with other members of your team if you like. And in the same email, I'll also provide a link to download the actual application itself, and on that link, the page it takes you to, there's a user guide should you need to kind of check back in on any of the steps that Jake's run through today. When you download the add-in for Word and install it, you'll need to click, Jake, I don't know if can you flick to the page, the screen?
Yeah, I can quickly demonstrate how that works.
Yeah,
just
so you'll
what
need
I'm doing
to,
for the
what you'll need
minutes.
to do is email us with a MAC code so that we can provide you with a license key to actually be able to use the tool. So
yeah,
as Jake's showing you that now, if you just quickly explain what you did there, Jake.
Yeah, so when you install the tool, you will have this S1000D ribbon item. When you click on Convert Word to S1000D, you will get this box come up that's telling you there's no license found. So if you click OK, what that's going to do is just copy this code here, and then please just email that to us, and we can issue a license essentially, because they're locked licenses to the machine, and this is a unique number to your machine. So click OK, and then just paste the code into an email for us.
So yeah, I'll include instructions for all of that and all the links in an email to everyone tomorrow. We are limiting the license download to one per organisation. So I know there's a few of you from the same company, so I'll probably group you all on the same email. And if the person that's downloaded it can email back to get the license code, that would be great. But any questions, you've got my email address. I'll copy Jake in on the emails I send out, so that if you do have further questions for Jake about the tool itself, you can reach directly out to him.
Please do. Yeah.
Via me. And I think that's it really. Yeah. Any questions, please get in touch. I'll be in touch with you all tomorrow with the details of the download and the recording. And yes, thank you ever so much, everyone, for attending. I appreciate the time zones aren't great for everyone. So yes, it is much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Feel free to contact us. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.